Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Head to Head, an Open Dialogues production. And for the next hour, I've got the great pleasure of talking sport and many other things with Mr. Ryan Leister. Ryan, thanks ever so much for coming on the show, mate.
No problem. Good evening, Bill. How are you?
Oh, I'm good, mate. I'm good. Now, this is going to be enjoyable for me because a lot of the time when we do these shows, I'm talking to people about stuff that I have to look into or I have to research, and sometimes, you have to really force yourself to go into it. But I know we can warm up with some interesting stuff, and you and I have had some good chats already on social media and other places about some of these subjects. So I think it's going to be a good night tonight. But let's start off for those unfortunate enough not to live in the Midlands and who might not be quite sure about who you are. Your main thing is that we know you for really is journalism on sport, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's I'm not a full-time journalist, but it's my privileged hobby really. Birmingham Live are very kind enough to allow me to have a column in there when I write about Wolves. Last year I did a little bit of work for BBC WM as well when I co-commentated in Spain and Portugal covering Wolves in the Europa League. So that was quite a highlight of the journalistic stuff I've done so far. And this year I had an afternoon gig on doing the Squad and 5 Live as well. So it's a very privileged hobby that I'm very much enjoying. Well, particularly when Wolves are going well, it's much easier then.
Well, an up-and-coming star of the media, I'm sure, mate. And I thought, I know you've got a lot of views on a lot of things, and we're gonna really open up tonight and talk about them. But let's start off with the stuff that we both have the shared passion for. Let's talk about football, and we're going to talk about a few things. And let's get the mighty Wolves out of the way first, because as many people might know, I'm a Wolves fan. I've been a Wolves fan for probably longer than most people have been alive, and it's great at the moment to see how well they're doing. Ryan's been watching them closely, and I want to hone in on one particular aspect, and that's the manager, because I think Nuno Espirito Santos is one of those guys there's more to him than football. He's almost like a philosopher at times with some of the way he speaks, and I've noticed as well this season maybe he's struggling a little bit with the lockdown and not being able to see his family and things like that. What's your take on this guy? This guy who's transformed the face of Wolverhampton in terms of football, and who I think is going to go on to even greater things eventually.
Well, in terms of my time watching Wolves, I've been watching Wolves. My first game was October 1990. So I've been watching quite a long time now. And these last 3.5 years of him being the manager have easily been the best in my life. We've got continental footballers bringing the beautiful game. It may have not been quite as beautiful recently, but he has brought the most joy in terms I've had from football supporting my team, and probably you as well, Bill, in terms of watching our team in the last 30 years, as long as I've been watching Wolves. So I think there is a lot more behind the man than it is. But I do know in terms of his past jobs, he's been stung a little bit by the media in the past. So I think he keeps his cards quite close to his chest. He's maybe a little bit defensive and protective. And why wouldn't you be if you've been stung in the past? I understand that. So we don't really know a lot about Nuno. He's very passionate. He's got his own ideas, and so far they're great ideas. And what I do really like about him as well is the fact he's evolving. We've talked about this off air in terms of formations and stuff, but he's brave enough to change, to take things forward, not standing still like a lot of managers do and be stubborn and fall on their sword. He's prepared to evolve and change the team as well. So I love the guy. He's brought much happiness to the Leicester household, and hopefully he'll bring much more as well.
Yeah, I think one of the noticeable things when you see this, and I think this is hopefully of interest to football fans in general, when you see a character like this in the game, that his philosophy about the game isn't. When I used to watch the Wolves before, we were a long ball team, and it was a case of banging up to Bully or John Richards or Derek Dougan and things like that and chase after it. But his philosophy is about bringing not just the players together, but the fans together, and in fact the city itself. He speaks about all being one pack. I've not seen that really in a football manager before.
Yeah, what he's done in terms of bringing the city together, I wasn't born up in Wolverhampton, but my family were, so the history of my family goes back through Wolverhampton. But he's very much a adopted Wolverhampton as his place now, and as well publicised recently, he's given £250,000 of his own money and the project to supporting feeding the local children who in poverty-stricken areas. I think that's a real mark of the man, to be honest. I think that's tremendous. And as you say about his ideas, there is a philosophy, and like you said at the start, he seems like he feels like a bit of a philosopher sometimes, but I think he's a very special individual, and he's a special man. And all good things come to an end, and whether it be good or bad, he will leave Wolves eventually, and that'll be a really sad day. So, but he's still leaving his imprint on Wolves. He's developing the team, he's helping the city, and he's brought lots of smiles to the city. So I can't speak, and not a lot, but I'm not going to over exaggerate because I've spoke to him one-on-one on a couple of occasions when I've been in privileged media positions away from interviews, and he's a really nice guy. He's passionate. He's very polite. He's everything I thought it would be. So yeah, great guy.
Yeah, I think that £250,000 donation, that's remarkable because no one would have expected him to do that. If he hadn't done it, if he'd have kept his cash in his pocket, no one would have thought any of the worst of him. And to make that and to donate it to a city. It's a city I was born in and I love, but we're struggling at the moment with the effects of lockdown, and we weren't exactly thriving before that, and there is a lot of hardship and poverty around the Wolverhampton area, and for a guy like that, a superstar of sorts, to actually be that generous, I think speaks volumes. I think it's something very, very special that I think I'll always remember.
Absolutely, generosity like that. He doesn't owe. No one's obliged to give any of their money to any charity or anything at all. But to be so kind, to start off, I think this is based on working with the Wolves Foundation. I think they've raised £500,000 in total now. That's amazing to support your local area and embrace what's going on like that. It's just, yeah. My words coming out of my mouth probably wouldn't do justice for the tremendous stuff that he's doing.
Well, I've got to ask a question just to intervene from Ozzy in Belfast, who's just put a question across the screen now. Ozzy is one of our regular viewers for every programme we do. It seems that Ozzy's there, and he seems like a good chap. And he's asked, do you know anything about Linfield? So I'll broaden it to say, do you have thoughts on Irish football or the development of both teams in Ireland, really?
I've got to be honest. If I could pretend here and do a quick Google, but I don't. I have been to. I've watched Wolves on a pre-season tour. I've seen them play Cork, and I've been to Bray. So I know we've had a few Irish players over, going far back as Dominic Foley. Then we had likes of Andy Keogh.
Robbie Dennison.
Say again, sorry.
Robbie Dennison as well.
Yeah, Robbie Dennison. Yeah, I mean. Robbie Dennison. Who else we had?
Stephen Ward was
yeah,
and Matt Doherty famously. We got him for about £70,000 from an Irish league side, didn't we? And then sold him on.
I think Bohemians rings a bell with one of them, but I think Stephen Ward. I'm sure Stephen Ward was marking Matt Jarvis in a pre-season friendly or something like. Or there's one of the players that's come. And he stopped them, and Mick was like, "Yeah, we'll have him," and then the rest is history. So, but yeah, my connection with Irish football isn't as knowledgeable as it probably should be. But that's probably because my wife knows how much football I watch, and it's all Wolves. So I haven't got much time for anything else. I do apologise.
Well, we have a link with Ireland as well, with Mick McCarthy as well, having been manager for many years. So, interesting stuff. But let's broaden it out because obviously we've got a lot of people who watch who aren't fortunate enough to have been in the Wolverhampton area. And for those of you who aren't, I'm sorry for you. I'm sure it's just as nice where you are. But we've had a lot of conversations, and it's one of the reasons I thought it'd be interesting for us to chat on air actually about VAR. Now, this is a subject. I did an interview earlier on today with Patrick O'Flynn, a former MEP colleague of mine, and he is bristling with rage about VAR. He's so upset about it that he's actually, it's one of the reasons he's cancelled his West Ham season ticket. The other reason was he wasn't happy about the intervention of politics in sport with the kneeling and so on. But he feels that VAR is mugging off the people who are in the ground. and it's taking it away from the people. So pandering to TV. What's your view of the effect that VAR's had on football?
I mean, first of all, with VAR, I think it's a good tool that's used terribly because, the sports, cricket, a bit more about cricket than me, Bill, rugby, there's technology used in those sports to very, very good effect. And because it's in its infancy, I feel like it's a good tool used badly by people that don't really understand yet. And what hurts the most is the consistency. I mean, I don't mind if there's a rule change because things are forever evolving in football and it changes, and that's fine if it's to make the game better. But some of the decisions earlier on in the season, the handball that Max Kilman had at penalty at Leicester, his hands were by his side. It hit him on just. If that's a penalty for him, it's a penalty for everybody. And it's not just Wolves based, but I get really frustrated that I feel like it's a system to protect the officials that's being used to protect the officials as opposed to getting the correct outcome. I've said this a few times. I'm not really interested in clear and obvious. I'm interested in, was it a foul or not? That's the most important thing. I don't mind if it's not from a viewer, if it's not obvious. That should be irrelevant. The most important thing is getting the correct decision. Like earlier on in the season, I'm going back to Wolves again. Traore was brought down in the box at Arsenal. The referee wasn't at replay. He's booked Traore. Replay shows it's a penalty and probably a yellow card for the keeper. But you can't, because you can't check yellow cards. He's gone back for diving, and because it wasn't clear and obviously a penalty, he's not given it. But it was a penalty, so it's infuriating. And like I forgot your friend's name, the West Ham fan,
Patrick O'Flynn.
Hi, Patrick. In terms of his opinion on that, when I go to away games and I'm with my mates, it's the spontaneity, the explosion of joy, the emotion. When that goal goes in, and I certainly am not as smartly dressed as I look, as my hair's everywhere, with your mates, it's that moment of joy. You work hard all week. You want to have that moment, and whether that's at Molineux when I take my mum to the games or it's away, you don't want that joy taken away from you. You want that passion, that moment you live for there when that moment, that goal going in gives you everything, that euphoria. That's why we go to football. And now when it's been checked on a screen, I mean, when we had it last season against Leicester, when we scored, but Willy Bolly and Dendoncker went down, it hit one on the arm, his head's facing the other way. And then the Leicester fans are cheering because the goal's been disallowed. As you know, said, that's not football. That's not football. So it's, as I said, I think something's been chiselled out, but it's miles off being sanded down and perfected. I do genuinely believe that it is a good tool being used woefully bad.
It is a good tool, and as you mentioned, you touched on cricket. I mean, I've seen it used in cricket. Obviously, a whole different flow to the game. But because there are natural gaps in cricket, you bowl the ball, it's got to be thrown back to the bowler or whatever, And in that time, you can call for a review, and it's very clear how it works. In football, even when they're reviewing, the decisions they're coming back with are often highly questionable. And I feel like that there might well be even a bias towards certain clubs.
Well,
and I don't know how you feel about that, but to me, and I don't just mean when I talk watch Wolves in general.
Of course,
when I look at a small club and a big club, it seems to go their way.
I mean, it didn't go too badly the other night for Wolves in terms of decisions. One, the handball was clearly obvious, but with those penalties, that when the players come together, sometimes they're not given, sometimes they are. But if you make no deliberate attempt to get the ball, it's a red card. It's whether you've blocked him or not, it's a penalty and it's a red card. So, but I mean, I think I talked about this with my mates and other people a lot. The VAR hub they've got, wouldn't it make sense if they had a representative, one from each club, in there to highlight things? Because take it back to the penalty in the Europa League quarter final. Goalkeeper was off his line. There's VAR in that game. That could have been like a £50 million decision gone against Wolves if they won that cup or something like that. It's ridiculous how you've got the tools and yet a top UEFA official is watching the game. words fail me. But I think in terms of speeding the game up, I'd probably like to limit the captains to having probably like in tennis, but maybe less in terms of 2 calls a game.
Yeah.
And if they believe it, I think tennis you get 3 and you don't lose the life if it's correct. I think that's the way it works in tennis.
Same thing in cricket, same kind of thing.
So I would have the same as that. I would say 2 or 3 to start with, and we can critique it as it goes on. And that way, then, if you're 2-0 down and you've checked both the goals and there's nothing wrong with it, you've lost your lives. And it's going to, and it is, well, you can probably tell I'm itching my ear, I'm scratching my face, I'm really frustrated. It is really frustrating. It's, in terms of bias, I think it's biased towards protecting the officials as opposed to getting the big teams' results. And I've seen that many bad decisions this year. I don't think there's any bias to any particular team. I just think it's the consistency. It's not even, but imagine being that bad at your job when people actually think that you're corrupt. That's pretty bad, isn't it? Unless you are actually corrupt, and I don't think that is the case. But imagine being that bad, people think this is dodgy. I mean, that's a shame, isn't it? We're talking about a multi-billion-pound industry that can't get something so simple as that right.
Well, that's what strikes me about the Premier League. You know, the standard of football, more often than not, is pretty exceptional. And then you've got some of the world's greatest players, and the officials, well, they know better than at any other time, you know, that I've been watching football all these years. And yet everything else has improved. The pitches, the standard of everything that goes on is totally different. And yet the officials, they could be officiating a park match. It doesn't, to me, make sense.
Some of the time you're watching games and you come out, and I think if you're not talking about an official, he's had a good game, because I mean the advantage rule that was brought in quite a few years ago. It's fantastic to let the game flow. If there's a bad tackle, it bounces for you. Because you want the game free flowing end to end. You don't want it to be stopped and checked every 5 minutes and with pedantic decisions and cheating and time wasting. But the officiating is so frustrating. Some of the, I'm not going to name names because I don't want to pick any out because I think they're all as bad as each other. I had like one particular favourite who I thought was a good referee, Michael Oliver, and now I'm not so sure he's any better than the rest, to be honest. But it's really frustrating because I love my football, as you do as well, and you just want to see the best for your game. But as you correctly say, in terms of officiating, the game has not evolved in my lifetime in that side.
And yet, as I say, in every other respect, it's almost unrecognisable from what I would have been watching in the 70s and 80s to what we see now. It isn't the same game. I mean, for a start, the tackles. Most of the tackles that were flying in those days and were applauded, and we were told, "Oh, well done, well played." No, it was straight red. There isn't a question about it.
My dad, he's a traditional old centre back. I mean, obviously he's not playing football anymore. But he's a traditional centre back, and he's like, it's just like those tackles when you could put like, should we call it a reducer on the fast one, and just to let him know he was there. Those days ago, I mean, in some ways. And your tough guy midfielders now, they've been phased out of the game. And I mean, I'm a technical ball purist when it comes to football. I love all the intricate stuff and the skill. So in terms of entertainment on that side and the skill side, I think it's better because, I mean, I don't mind a tough fair tackle. And I think sometimes maybe, they say you can't tackle from behind, but some of the great tackles from behind when you slide alongside the man, scoop the ball, I don't want it to go not soft, but too gentle. It's a contact sport. I want people up for headers. I want people battling because it's a battle as well, because you win the battle, earn the right to play and win the game. So I don't want to lose all the contact out of it, but definitely not.
Yeah. And the thing is, we've got players now who actually, part of their role in the team is to win free kicks, to win fouls. I mean, look at the statistics on the number of times Jack Grealish has won a foul. Now, Jack Grealish is a fantastic footballer.
Oh,
no question.
Oh no, he's brilliant. He could help England. He's that good to win a major trophy. He's so good. I prefer him down the middle in a number 10, maybe playing off Kane and having 2 wide men. I think he's a little bit wasted out wide, but down the middle when he can go left or right foot, he's a joy to watch. But and he is an expert free kick winner. He gets his body. He knows exactly what to do. We place in his. I mean, some may take that as a criticism. He has been booked for diving in the past, and he has simulated in the past. But so have Wolves players. So I'm not just digging him out on that. But like you said, though, he's an expert at winning free kicks. He knows that timing and that skill, the twist of the body. He's great, but that's not a dig at him. He's a brilliant footballer.
Yeah, well, it's an illustration of how the game's changed. I mean, you got someone like Grealish who, I mean, he's built like a brick house as well, and and he's going over at the slightest touch. Now, I'm not really having a dig at him for it because he's obviously been coached and told to do that. Harry Kane, the captain of England, does that kind of thing, and I just question it really. Well, there's been a lot of changes for the better, but when you see the best English players and they're behaving like that, and I don't understand why, but I just think, well, maybe some of the changes aren't for the best. Maybe that's not setting the best example to the kids in the playground.
No, I mean, another great example with Harry Kane. For me at the moment, he's probably the best. Well, I know he's injured now, but form before that, he was probably the best number 9 in the world, making as many goals as he's scoring, dropping deeper, setting Son through, finishing himself. I mean, not quick off the mark, but not slow at full pace. Great in the air. The guy's got everything apart from electric pace. He's brilliant, but his antics on the field are very questionable sometimes. The way he leans his back over to win a free kick, but definitely endangering the health of other players, constantly in the referee's ear. But like you said, it's not a good example. But the thing is, though, Bill, in my opinion, it's everything is about winning. There's some. It's almost like there's a gesture of sportsmanship and are you okay? But anything to win, anything to gain that millimetre, that foot, that centimetre, that yard, that free kick, that corner, whatever it takes. The money is massive. The prize money is huge. Players want trophies. So no, it's anything you can do, win the game. And it just feels like that. I don't totally agree with it. But the thing is, if it's not being called out, then why would they stop doing it?
Yeah, I think I have actually heard a few of the TV pundits and experts who have actually started to question it now because it's becoming so prevalent. And I remember when the guy came to play for Tottenham from Germany, German World Cup winning star, went on to be Klinsmann. Yeah, and he was given absolute dog's abuse for the first season because he was doing exactly what everyone does now. And in fact, he turned it into a goal celebration of doing the dive.
I remember that. I think, I don't know how I know this, but it's geeky sad that I do. It was the opening game of the season I think it was in the mid-90s. I'm going to say probably something like 94. He scored away at Sheffield Wednesday, I think, scored a winning header and a 4-3 game and went and did the slide. And that was sort of the start of the goal celebrations as well. And I love Klinsmann. Yeah, you know what? He was a bit theatrical, but what a number 9 he was. What a player.
Well, actually, as it turns out, he was ahead of his time, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Because he was playing as they play now.
Yeah, wonderful footballer. He had the lot. A joy to watch. And the Premier League, a genuine Premier League star. Brilliant.
Now, we've spoken a bit about England players there, actually, and my apologies to Ozzy in Belfast about this, but I've got to ask this question because we've got tournaments coming up. We've got a new England team really taking shape with people breaking into it, including our own Connor Cody from Wolves, but there's Jack Grealish tearing up trees and one or two people on that side who look like they might have the makings of something special. Where do you see this England team going? Do you think England have got a chance of achieving something, or are they going to be the nearly men again?
I think if that team, that old squad, who people didn't really give a chance to, can get to the semi-finals of a World Cup before, anything's possible. I don't think there's a particular standout team. I mean, Belgium were the official FIFA ranked number 1 team. England beat them. They weren't particularly great on that day. So, but as it is with the Germans and Brazil, they always turn up for World Cups. They sort of plod on through and then they really up it when it comes to tournament time. Now, I wouldn't rule out a trophy. I wouldn't bet against England. I wouldn't get up against Portugal either in terms of our loyalties. So, but I think 16-1 Portugal to win the next European Championships. Pretty good odds.
That's not a bad bet.
Yeah, and I think England, Belgium, France, probably Germany, all about joint favourites. But there is some exciting players. Jack Grealish playing off Kane. Rashford, very, very good. He's really improved technically. I think the weakest area of our team, though, for me, is midfield. It's hard to get. I mean, they're good players, but Jordan Henderson, Winks. They're all right. Declan Rice is improving, but they don't strike me as the centre midfielders that are going to help a team win a World Cup or a European Championship. So,
well, after having had the situation where we couldn't fit Gerrard and Lampard in the same team, and then you look at the guys now, and it's like I think we've probably dropped a couple of degrees there, as I think we have in the goalkeeping department. Because I'm going back further, I remember it being who we're going to pick, Peter Shilton or Ray Clements, and then we've got David Seaman and Nigel Martin, who I always thought was a bloody good goalkeeper. Yeah, and you look at the situation now, and there's a question mark there about the goalkeeping situation. There's got to be.
It almost feels like, Nick Pope palmed one out last night or the night before the Man City game. Every other week, you seem to be talking about Pickford making a mistake. It's a real concern, but again, I think if England need to play, not because Southgate's a centre back, so England will set up to restrict the opposition and counter. But England's best players are their forwards: Kane, Grealish, Rashford. So play on the front foot, attack. Don't worry about tucking in. Let them players express themselves. For me, go for it. I don't want to be if you've not got a great team of centre midfielders and not a great goalkeeper, you don't really want to be inviting people on. In my opinion, anyway.
Well, you missed out on Sterling on that one as well.
He's goal machine. Sterling one side, Rashford the other, Grealish behind, Kane. That's a front four as good as any of a team in the world going forward. It's as good as anybody. So play to that strength, be attacking. I'd rather win 4-2. Than try and drag out a 1-0 or holding on for a 0-0. But
that goes on to something that we've had various debates about in the past. Formations. With the England setup, which I've thought for some time England should play 3 centre backs, because I think that's the way most Premiership clubs were playing anyway. But there seems to have been a trend back this season to 4 at the back, and these various permutations are getting more forwards in. And I know you favour that for Wolves, but do you favour that for England as well, to take that sort of ultra attack-minded approach?
I think England are spoiled as well in wing-back, and they're spoiled for pacey width. So that's the areas I want to get all the best players in. So it's a real struggle. When England played, they got to a World Cup semi-final playing 3 at the back with a team that we expected to go nowhere. But it's really hard to tell. Jordan Henderson was brilliant for Liverpool, but I don't see him in a 2-man midfield for England. And if he's maybe holding us a 1 and letting other people express themselves, but then you lose a forward then from doing that. So, but what I would say, in a bonus point for England, John Stones, the turnaround in his form this season has been nothing short of sensational. Man City brought in Ruben Dias for about 55, 60 million, but playing next to him, Stones looks like the player we thought he would be like 4 or 5 years ago, and now he is the player. So with that kind of form, I'm sure Southgate are watching and thinking, I can go back to back 4 here again. And that might not bode well for Cody, but Cody's not particularly playing well for Wolves at the moment either, and in a 3 or a 4, to be honest. So I do feel a little bit sorry for him. He has dipped a little bit, but for England now, with the former Stones, with the likes of, Trippier, Walker, Alexander-Arnold, we're spoilt for fullbacks. So I'll go 4 at the back with England and get attacking. With the 2, very much similar to Wolves, with the 2 holding midfielders, Grealish in the 10, Rashford, Sterling, Kane. Have some of that.
Well, hey, at least if we lose, we'll lose entertainingly. That's the main thing, isn't it? Really?
And although it does feel like football, I want to, as a fan in the terraces, I want to win at all costs most of the time, but I want to be entertained as well. It's not often you get the 2 together and you like Man City, but if we're going to lose, at least be entertained and have a go. I'd rather lose a game 4-3 than add a real go at someone, as opposed to losing 1-0 and hardly having a shot. So,
yeah, go down in a blaze of glory. I suppose it's far better. To bring on the sort of segue into other issues, really. One of the things that I was enjoying doing very much before this last lockdown was commentating and reporting for local radio on non-league football. And there's quite a lot of good non-league sides around this area. Now, they've all been stopped playing because of the COVID restrictions and rules that have been brought in. And not only is it damaging the clubs in terms of the on the field activity, it's damaging financially. And it's not just non-league. As you go up, in fact, everywhere outside the sort of top 6 Premier League, clubs are absolutely being put to the sword financially because of this situation. What's your view on when fans should be allowed back into football grounds, and the effect of the COVID regulations actually on football itself from the grassroots up?
I mean, I'm in various group chats, like Wolves related, and we're all desperately missing our days out with our mates, our away days. If you're a football fan, it's a massive part of your life. So in terms of your mental well-being, the thing that you love doing the most, other than being with your family, is taken away from you, and it's hard. And I think looking at the teams as well, it's hurt. Not having fans has hurt the teams as well. It's hurt everybody. But going back to what you're saying about actually having fans in, I still think we're a long road from recovery. The question is as well, are teams going to insist that everyone's had a vaccine, and if they haven't, they can't come in? They'll be within their rights to do so. I'll be having mine either way. Whatever it takes, I'll have 3 if you want me to get back to football. I'll get in that ground, whatever you want me to do. So it's going to be a question of that, really. And I think, what, certain football associations may insist that fans can't come in the ground unless they've been vaccinated, in terms of stewards, footballers, everybody, because people may not like that, but they're in their rights to do so. And that way then you can almost get on with normal life. So my local team, where I was before, was Solihull Moors. Now Brackley Town, teams that are, that rely on the small numbers they get. I think they're both doing okay in terms of finances, but in terms of, you rely on that community feel, the people coming in, the few hundred coming in, merchandise shop, food. It's a real shame. But you never know what's going to happen. There's been so many mixed messages and changing the mind from the top down. You're getting vouchers 1 minute to go and have some money off your dinner. The next minute you're on lockdown again. It's hard to keep up, Bill, to be honest. Day to day, I know that's going to lead on to other things, but it's hard to know what's going on from day to day at the moment.
Well, the thing is, it is hard to keep up with it, but where you're talking about with these football associations and football clubs asking for proof of vaccination, you're heading there into the territory of a vaccination passport, which it's not just been now in the narrow field of sport we're talking about, but also certain airlines have been talking about it, certain tour companies. It could even be that they start to say you can't go in a pub without showing some kind of ID saying you've been vaccinated. There are civil liberty aspects to this and issues of personal freedom. I think it's interesting to talk to someone who, I know you've got strong political views that you express, but who isn't involved in the world of politics, to get your view on this. Do you think that that's a sacrifice worth making? Do you think people will take that step?
I think the difficult step will be for people who are strong anti-vax but are massive football fans. That's the people it's going to hurt the most. Because me personally, I'm happy to get the vaccine and get back as soon as possible. I don't see any issue, but I also believe that people have the right to decide. If people don't want to have it, that's up to them. But then companies, pubs, do they have the right to say, I don't want you in my establishment unless you've been vaccinated? It's a really tricky area. It's probably something more that you could have more knowledge and expertise on than me, Bill. But I think that's a really dangerous area. But what do you do? What do you do if laws get passed? The FA and the Premier League insist all fans, players, stewards, everybody associated must be vaccinated or they can't come in. What do you do? You've got no choice then, have you, really? It's dangerous grounds, but like you said, I genuinely believe that people should have a choice on pretty much everything, and if they don't want to, that's up to them. But in the long term, it could cost people. So back to you, Bill.
Well, see, the thing that concerns me about it, I'm not anti-vaccines. I am concerned about the way this set of vaccines has been rushed. and the fact that normally it would take 10 years or so to even get close to doing something like this, and they've done it in 12 months. Now, it could well be that that's because the whole world's been working on it and everyone's really pulled together, all that. It could well be that. But then they start doing things like saying, well, we were going to give you this Pfizer vaccine and you're supposed to have it a certain number of weeks later. Well, now we're going to stretch that and make it further away. And we think it will probably still work. And there's a mutant strain of the virus out there. So it might or might not work against it. And all at the same time as this rushed process, people are, and you've hit the nail on the head of something that's happening. People are going to be forced, not officially, but forced by the actions of companies into having to have a vaccine to live some kind of life. I think that's taking us down a really a dangerous road away from freedom of choice. And as you said, you touched on, that's one of your key areas that you really care about, isn't it?
Well, like I said, everyone should have a choice, but it'll get to the point when. But what's the alternative? Coming back, how do you stop that or change that? Because at the moment, as a country and as a planet, we're treading water. People are struggling. Countries are struggling even more. Jobs are going. So, what point do we have to say we'd prefer you to have it and lean on you, or do you say you can do what you want? But if companies decide not to allow people in their premises, then that's up to them. So it's a real trick. It's a real fine line. I don't think there is a right or wrong answer on this bill. I don't think there is with every sort of political topic, there is no satisfying anybody. It's everybody. It's impossible. And I think the majority of people will have a vaccine. I don't know personally anybody that is saying, no, I don't want it. I know people that say, I prefer not to have it, but I will. I just want to get on with my life. And I think that's the general feel. We could be having this interview meeting now, sat together, and then we could go for a pint afterwards. And now we can't. You know what I mean? It's just the simple things like that we're missing out on. And I'm very much now, I've had enough. And whether that's made me softer, I just want to get it over and done with. Give me the vaccine. Let's get on with my life. I've got a 3-year-old daughter. I want to be taking her to theme parks and going out and going swimming and doing the normal things. And we've had a year of our life taken off us. So give me them vaccines now, Bill.
Well, you're hitting on something really important, because a lot of people are being coerced this way into doing things they wouldn't necessarily want to. And it's an insidious thing, I think, within the way we're being governed, that you may not wish to take. I personally, I'd rather give it a miss myself. But if it comes down to it and I end up not being able to go to football, cricket, go to the pub, or do any of those things, I'm going to have to think about it. And even now, even though they've said that these vaccines won't necessarily stop you getting ill and won't necessarily stop you passing it on to someone, and yet we're still being coerced down a route where we can't make our own informed decision. And for me, that's worrying. And the whole way that the last 12 months have gone, with the government suddenly flexing its muscles and telling us what we can and can't do, without us having a say in it, because there's really no votes on this, no public discussion. And in fact, often, and this is why I word these things carefully, if you say something about this on social media, which is the only avenue left to us to discuss matters on, you get banned, blocked, deleted, and you name it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a broader picture at work here, I think. I don't know what your take is on that, whether or not you think there's some kind of broader thing going on, or if it's just so happens because of the situation that these things are going on. I don't know how it's making you feel.
I'm feeling different, to be honest. And for as much as people are finger pointing at the government and as many things they could have got better and it's going wrong, a little bit more recently has felt sorry for the government, because I don't think, no matter who was in charge, whether you was in charge, whether the greatest leaders of all time were in charge, whoever was in charge, I don't think anyone could have. You don't get. This isn't in your Prime Minister handbook, is it? You're not ready for this. And what I do feel sorry for is the fact that he's not making the decisions by himself. He's getting advised by leading scientists and experts of what to do. And it's his job to then take the brunt of the abuse of that decision that's been made. So a bit of me does feel sorry for him in that aspect. And whether that's because I've become a bit softer, this lockdown's made me soft, I don't know.
You're losing your edge, mate. You're losing your edge.
I'm sorry, mate.
You're losing your edge. Come on.
I'm not getting splinters on this, Bill, because I genuinely don't have a side. I don't think I have enough evidence either way to back me up on what I think. Now, I've been massively unimpressed with the lockdowns, like letting you in, letting you out, letting you in, letting you out. The consistency has really annoyed me. Like I said, I've got a heavily pregnant wife and a daughter, and it's hard. And then we've been asked to work from home and like school your child, and it's really difficult. So I think you've been asked to do a lot of things that have been difficult, that haven't been really fair and made it hard. Do I totally believe what they're saying and their reasoning? No. Do I totally trust them? No. Do I believe they have our well-being at heart? I still do, yeah. Maybe that's me going soft again. But I know what you're saying, Bill, and I do think there's definitely a space for other theories in that, but I don't think I know enough either way to make a solid, you're doing this or you're doing that. I just know I'm really frustrated, and there's been that much stuff pushed around on social media. I'm like, I'm not sure what to believe anymore. I'm like, I really don't know.
Well, you touched on something. Well, none of us are qualified and equipped to fully understand what's happening, and I would extend that probably to a lot of scientists as well, because it's supposed to be a novel and new thing. But with this SAGE committee they've got, they're taking the advice of one group of scientists. There are a huge number on the other side who they're completely ignoring, and they keep saying follow the science. And I wonder whether or not, and your feeling of sympathy for the government might play into this a little bit. I wonder whether or not actually the scientists are leading the politicians by the nose rather than advising the politicians who are then making a decision, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's hard to tell. I mean, some of the most wealthy companies in the world are medical companies. We could run deep for another hour into conspiracy theories on this, but it's really hard to know on what to believe. But like I said, my main point on that. Sorry, my dog's jumping up at me. If you can hear him scratching, I think he's had enough of me talking about that. Stop it. Apologies, but I genuinely feel sorry for the people that have to front up as their job as a politician and give information that other people have told them, because they've not come up with the data or the stats or the advice of isolate, self-isolate, have the vaccine, don't have the vaccine, lock down this, 20%, 50% off your meal, this, come out now, you're all right for Christmas, now you got back home. I'm in a real pickle with it. I just want it to get better, Bill. I'm more frustrated, and like, I did before tonight, did my research on this because I knew we were going to talk about it, and I read on it, and I'm like, I don't even know what to think now. I don't know who to believe or what's going on. There's just so much. But the main thing I do know about this is I just want my life back. I just want to have a normal life back with my family. I want to go for a pint with you. I want to go and watch Wolves. There's things I just want to do in normal life. So it's really hard, and there's that much going on. I've had to stop watching daily updates because it's so, well, for a start, I'm sick of the same people asking the same questions in a different way every single day, and that drives me up the wall. That just feels like a gesture question. But otherwise, the main thing about this is I just want my life back.
Yeah, and I think we'll all drink to that, and I'll hold you to the beer because you're buying. But Daryl Goodliff just made a comment on the feed there and said that they're only listening to experts from one side of the debate, and actually that seems to be the trend in politics. Climate change is another issue where there's only one set of experts get listened to, and we're constantly being told this is fact and everything else is conspiracy. Well, no, I think it's all theories, and we should have the freedom and right to choose which one we believe. Yeah. But the scenario you've been outlining to me, where you're probably going to have to go along with it just because you want your life back and you're feeling a bit battered down by it. I think that's happening to the whole country, but that isn't democracy or freedom. I don't think that's subtle, coercive psychological tactics to force us down a route that we might not have taken.
No, I agree. And that, again, that's a fair point. And I'm very much the same as you. I believe everyone should have a choice. And that's key for our way of life in the Western world. But I think this is unique circumstances. No one's planned for this. This has never happened before in terms of modern Earth. So what do we do? And I know this is your show, but putting it back to you, what's the alternative?
Well, the alternative, as pointed out, for example, one alternative in the Great Barrington Declaration by lots of leading scientists. Not saying it's right or wrong, but there's an alternative whereby we don't go through the lockdowns. We seek to protect and shield those who are the very vulnerable. And then we basically try and get on and crack on with life, because and hopefully we get some kind of immunity build up by the fact that we're catching it and living, but we're building the antibodies up.
Yeah.
And the advantage to that, really, apart from the fact that you don't lose your freedom, also the economy doesn't go to hell, and you don't have mass recessions and huge unemployment, which is what is literally around the corner for us. So
do you think that would have been something that there would have been briefed to the decision makers, but then that comes with a risk of potentially, I know the Nightingale hospitals are closed down, they're doing nothing now, but do you think that was a risk that was put to them, saying that we could do this, however, we can't guarantee that we won't have enough beds for everyone that's ill? Do we take that risk if we do that?
Yeah, I think it was the start of this crisis. I think this was the route that our government was going to take, and then pressure from other governments around the world taking a different route, and this concern about NHS beds has led them to go down the lockdown route. But initially, if you look at the briefings from the SAGE experts, they're saying it's a largely not fatal illness. And actually, latest figures coming out of Italy show that 99% of the people who died in Italy from it, and they had it bad, they had serious underlying health conditions. And the biggest part of those underlying health conditions were heart disease, diabetes, and blood pressure. Now, I'd put it to you that those conditions are only made worse by locking everyone in, shutting the gyms and the sports facilities.
Yeah, I can't argue with that point at all, Bill. I know you come back with some. I know you come back with some numbers somewhere along the way. I knew that was going to come back my way. But yeah, you're right. In terms of, I mean, a lot of my friends have talked about that, and I partially agreed in terms of protecting the very vulnerable and everyone else getting on with it. Yeah, that's something I would have definitely welcomed. But where do you draw the line on that? Because I want to protect my family and my parents, my pregnant wife. So where do you draw the line? I mean, it's something that I would have, if they'd have made that decision, obviously I'd have been happy. Maybe I'd have been happier than now because I would have had some kind of life, again, in terms of outside my four walls of my house and my family. But it's really difficult. I mean, let's just hope if it ever happens again, we're prepared and we know what to do next time.
Well, I bloody hope it's not lockdown. Now, there's another situation, political situation, I believe you've got some views on. And it ties in, really, because our friends in the EU, our great chums over there, have been threatening to blockade us because they screwed up and didn't order enough vaccines, and they want a piece of ours, despite the fact we've spent more money than them on it and we've been more efficient in doing it. I just wondered if you got any feedback for them on that decision.
I mean, this should have been on after 9 o'clock, I think, now.
Feel free, let rip, mate.
When that news came out about what they were trying to do regarding Northern Ireland, words don't fail me very often, Bill, but I was like gobsmacked, and then I went to work and I let it all out at work. And like everyone, whether people were anti-Brexit, pro-Brexit, everyone was like, this is disgusting. This is outrageous. It's taking it really simply, though, is we made a decision. We invested millions, billions of pounds and said, yeah, we'll have that, please. We'll have this, this, and this. We made a decision there and then. We didn't have any red tape holding us back. We didn't have to sit around a table and we're not paying this much. We're not paying that much. We made a decision. And I mean, the biggest for me so far, what a huge positive of Brexit this is for the UK, leading the world in vaccines. I mean, and the EU probably showing themselves up a little bit there. I mean, how could anyone defend that after that? I mean, this is your main topic, Bill, and I'm trying to be as polite and as diplomatic as I can. But
you don't need to be. You don't need to be. Don't forget that most people who watch this will be of a like mind to you. So you can let rip, mate. I mean, personally speaking, I think it was an act of aggression and hostility, and I think people need to understand now that whilst we do business with the EU, they're not our friends.
Yeah.
They never have been. They are trading partners and rivals, is how I would describe them. And the rivalry, I think, is getting increasingly bitter and will get worse as we do better and they decline. That's how I see it.
Well, we've, in terms of, I did some stats as well. So I was waiting for this bit to come. So we're now 1 in 5 adults who've been vaccinated. 10.5 million people, or 19.9% of the country. 500,000 people have had their second jab. So with these numbers, if this keeps up, we're going to be months ahead, maybe even 6 months, a year ahead of the rest of Europe. That's only a good thing for our economy. We can get back on our feet, get people back to work, get the new jobs going, get the house market going. Again, the house market hasn't got too bad during lockdown, actually. But in terms of, this is an opportunity to really take advantage. I mean, I don't want to see anyone fall apart or downfall, because everyone should be entitled to a good life. But we've got an opportunity now to really put our foot down and get things going again in the UK. So in terms of the vaccine, I mean, was it Andrew Bailey, the governor of the Bank of England, was like praising the vaccine stuff today, talking about how this is going to be great for our economy. So in terms of that, I'm pretty sure that's a good news story to come out of it.
Well, it is. But and also, I personally take the line that now they've been like that with us, and they're desperate to get some vaccines off us. I think once everyone who wants a vaccine here has had the vaccine, we are going to have surplus stocks. I mean, we've bought enough vaccine to vaccinate the galaxy 100 times over.
I'll have a couple extra for football.
they've gone big. Well, I think we can, by all means, they can have our surplus, but I think we should charge them a hefty profit, because let's face it, they're printing money hand over fist. We've gone into debt hugely during this crisis, and we've invested billions in the research and developments on this. I think they should pay through the nose for it.
Well, first of all, like I said, let's get us all, well, everyone who wants a vaccine, let's get everyone vaccinated. But I'd also, as well, we've got to remember that we're having people who may not be able to have it through illness. We're having children who are being born, people who are like, I don't know what age they're going down in terms of the vaccine age. I don't know any official news on that yet, but we need to keep a surplus, because children will be turning into adults, and any sign of this back, we need to get those people vaccinated. So I don't know officially, Bill, if are they vaccinating children as well, or is it just down to 16?
I don't think children are in the frame for it just yet, and I think one of the issues with it is it doesn't keep. So once it's been produced, there's a certain amount of time that you can use these things in, and then it's going to either be binned or whatever, and it's difficult to store.
Yeah, if that's the case, then I would sell it on. I mean, I wouldn't, as I say, I wouldn't put them over a barrel, but I'd certainly be happy to make a few pound back.
And Ryan seems to have lost his connection for a second there. But it's probably the dog jumping in the air. But as you said, the gist of the conversation was going quite well. We've covered a lot of ground. I'm hoping he's going to get back online in a second. But basically, we're talking about vaccine provision, where it looks like people are actually going to go ahead and have the vaccine, even though many of them were uncomfortable with it because they've been beaten down, and had to sort of give way and give ground on this because they want to get back to their lives. And I think that's unfortunate. I think anyone who chooses to take a vaccine should, of course, but I don't think people should be coerced into it. That's just an opinion to put out there. And here is Ryan back again. I was just treading water, mate, waiting for you. I think I've channeled your answers to a few things. So we're on to the last 5 minutes. So I want to I'd like to end these things off with a bit of a fun question. So I'm going to give you an example of mine, and then you see if you can do. My favourite football moment ever. I think it was probably about 1987 or 88. It might have been 88, 89. I was playing pub football for a side called Herbert's Park Tavern in the Sandwell League. I was a fairly blood-curdling defensive midfielder, as you can imagine. I wasn't particularly the playmaker. We were in a cup match. Half of our side were Albion fans, half of us were Wolves fans. We knew we'd got to get the game finished because Wolves and Albion were playing at the Hawthorns for the first time in however many years, straight after. It was 2-2, coming up to the last minute of the match. One of our lads, who was an Albion fan, broke through, beat 5 players and slotted it into the bottom corner. Ref blew his whistle and both sides ran from the pitch, still covered in mud. We all, Wolves and Albion fans there, they all jumped in our cars, covered in mud, drove to the Hawthorns, watched that game, and that was the game where right at the end, Steve Bull smashed home the winner after an Andy Mudge cross, and it was the biggest crowd surge that I have ever been in my life. It was when we were still on the terraces. I jumped in the air, and when I landed, I travelled 70 foot forwards, and I screamed so much that even for a couple of days after the game, I couldn't speak. So that was my best football moment ever. What's yours?
That'll take some beating, Bill. I mean, I wish I was in that away end, but one of my favourite ever moments was I started sort of commentary and co-commentary for there's a couple of partially sighted and blind Wolves fans who we used to sort of, I don't know how me and my dad fell into it, but I ended up doing some commentaries for them on away days because like the away facility back in the 90s wasn't really, it was very home biased, so they'd prefer to sit with a fan, and I love doing it. So basically I've got to talk about football for 2 hours. I mean, you've heard enough. I mean, brilliant, as an absolute treat. But we was at, I mean, I've got a West Brom story, but we've done a West Brom run, so I'll go to Ellen Road. It was in the quarter-final of the FA Cup, and Don Goodman had just chipped it over the key. I think it was Nigel Martin chipped it over to go 1-0. It was 8,000 in the end. They're just, like I said, there was peak bodies. I'd lost him. This blind guy had lost his commentator because I'd gone. But then Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank had a penalty, and Hans Sager saved the penalty. Kevin Muscat got a massive lump of mud and threw it at Hasselbank as he was taking the penalty, and Sager saved the penalty. That commentary, all right, I dare anyone to beat the passion of that commentary. When Hans, I probably sounded like, I don't know, a child screaming, like the high pitch in my voice for there. I come out, and then the full-time whistle went. Everyone's in motion. We're in the FA Cup semi-final. I mean, we lost at Arsenal at Villa Park, I think, that year.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
In terms of being able to commentate and express myself in that game, I mean, it's the guys that were grateful that I'm doing it, but that was an honour to share my view of the game with somebody. That and West Brom for the 4-2, Ian Roberts hat-trick, that was one of my special moments in football. I mean, I could describe many a day with my dad, but in terms of crazy euphoria, no VAR, it was great.
And one last shot in. Greatest individual player, not necessarily the performance, but the player himself that you've actually witnessed live. I'll give you my two. Kenny Dalglish, and I went to I was at the final of the UEFA Cup, or whatever it's called now, the one that we were in anyway, that the second-rate cup, and when Chelsea won that, and I saw Eden Hazard play. Those two, I thought, were two of the greatest players I've actually seen in the flesh.
The greatest live performance, we played Man City. It was they beat us, I think, 3-2, 4-2. Emmanuel Adebayor, when he fancied it, he was unplayable. He played that day. Michael Mancian was fast. He ran alongside Michael Mancian and just picked him up out of the way. That game, he destroyed Wolves. I know Adebayor didn't always fancy it, but that day, he was incredible. I mean, we come out of that ground, I was like, I've never seen anyone play like that. He treated our defence like they were nothing. The disrespect to just to pick up a player and pick him out of the way. And I was like, I hated that was against us, but it was brilliant. And sometimes you just got to go, well played.
And on that note, I'm going to say, well played, mate. Thank you very much for tonight. It's been fun. We'll get this shared around. Everyone who watches, please remember to share around these videos of these events, to follow Open Dialogus on YouTube. The more you do that, the more that we can get people on and have these kind of shows and discussions. And I want to say, Ryan, thanks ever so much for being on, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks,
And we'll have that point before a Wolves game one of these days in the future. And
thanks for watching, everybody, and thanks for the questions.
Cheers. Right, that's it. Good night, everyone, and all the best from head to head.